Okay, so continuing on with our 9.4 and dealing with Venn diagrams. Again, go and copy this down in your workbook. Still like to see you guys writing this goal down. Helps you remember what our focus is for this section. And feel free to pause in order to write this down and not feel rushed. So our goal for this section is we're going to be able to construct Venn diagrams, which we've been doing a little bit of, and then make observations based on that Venn diagram. So make some predictions, observations about the data, or what it tells us is going on. This here is a link to a web site that allows you to fairly easily create Venn diagrams. It'll start with two circles. You can label it how you want, change the color. As you look at the website up in the top left, it'll say new item. Clicking on that will allow you to title pieces of information and put in numbers and drag and place them anywhere you would like within the circle or intersections. And then what you can do there is you can then screenshot that and then paste it into your slides when you're going to do that. Now remember, in order to screenshot, you're going to hit three buttons. First one is Control plus Shift plus what they call the window selector button, which is the button above the 6 on your keyboard, and there's a little rectangle with two vertical lines next to it. That will then allow you to select a certain area of the page instead of selecting the whole thing. It'll come up, turn your cursor into crosshairs, then you can click and drag to the box that you want to take a picture of. It'll save it, copy it to click copy to clipboard down on the bottom right, and then you can paste it into your diagram and repeat with any ones that you have to do next after that. Alright, so here we have a two-way table talking about men and women that survived on or did not survive on the Titanic. So we did a little of this previously, changing this into a Venn diagram. So what you're going to do is you're going to create three Venn diagrams. One is men versus women, then women versus survived, and then you get to choose one of your own conditions. Now I will give you a hint that sometimes Venn diagrams are what we call mutually exclusive, which means there is no overlap. So as you look at it, you could get a Venn diagram that could look like this, where you have two pieces of information that have nothing in common, and therefore the Venn diagram of those two pieces of information do not intersect. So use the link from the previous slide to create these, and then on the next slide you're going to be able to paste those in there and showing those three different diagrams. So here's where you would paste your Venn diagrams in. You should have three of them. Make sure you label them so I know which one is which. Okay, so here we're going to create two probability statements using each of your Venn diagrams from question 2. So let's take a look at what those Venn diagrams should be. So men, we have 805 men, and then we have 402 women, and there is no overlap on that one. There's nothing shared. There's men and there's women, and there's no intersection between those two groups. Now as we look at women, so we have our women here, but then we're also looking at how many survived out of that total group of women. So we have a little bit of an overlap on this one. Okay, so as we look at this, we're going to have an intersection of groupings here. So we'll call this one our survived, and this one is our women. So as we look at this, we have women, and then we have our survived And then right here is where we have our intersection now. And remember when we talked about previously with Venn diagrams, this intersection is where we have both. So this is women survivors, which according to our data there is 296. And now we have to figure out the rest. So as far as those who survived, left over is 146. So that total 296 plus 146 still gives us our 442, which is our total number of survivors here. Then we look at our women. Our women was made up of 296 survivors and then 106 that did not survive. So total here, 106 plus 296 gives us our 402. And then whatever your third Venn diagram is, that's going to be on you. And not quite sure what you could have done there. You could have done men that did not survive, could have done women that did not survive, could have done men that survived. And you could have done those that survived and those that did not survive. So you have some multiple options that you could have worked with. That one is on you. So now here we want to create two probability statements using each of our Venn diagrams. Now one of the first probability statements that stands out to me is that there were 296 women survivors out of the total amount of 442 total survivors. And as we look at that as a percentage, we get 296 divided by 442, which then gives us a survival percentage rate that 97 of the total survivors were women. So 2/3 of the survivors from the Titanic were women. So interesting to think about why it's 2/3. I'm sure you can think through some different things, some of the rules about an abandoned ship and how that follows, especially back during that time period. Now, the first one are men and women. Not that exciting because there's no intersection between those two. You could talk about the percentage of women on the boat total. And we'll go with that one since we talked about women here and see what the total makeup of comparing survivors to the percentage of women on the boat as well. So women, there were 402 women. Out of, now, mutually exclusive, so we can just go ahead and add those two complete totals together, and we get 1,207. And when we go 402 divided by 1207, we get 33.31%. So the total makeup of the Titanic was actually 1/3 women, so the survival rate was almost double in relation to the total population on the boat. So interesting facts, and sometimes seeing that in Venn diagrams and then put in percentages puts it into perspective instead of just a nice two-way table with a bunch of numbers. So some good food for thought on that. All right, so here we want to create and label 3 different Venn diagrams using this data. Create at least one that is mutually exclusive and at least one that has an intersection. So just a different way of us writing this. Now we have to do a little bit of work here. They give us some information, the rest of it we can figure it out. So we're given probability of a girl is 42 out of 100. So if we have 100 people, 42 of them are females or are a girl, that means that we have to have 58 out of 100 be boys. And then we're down here, we're given the probability of art is 30 out of 100. So then probability of it not being art is what we call the complement. And so that is the leftover, so it has to be 70 out of 100. Now we have this probability of girl or art. So girl is 42 out of 100. Art is 30 out of 100. Or means we're going to add. And now the intersection of those two got counted twice, and so that's why we subtract that 12. So what I want you to do is create 3 different Venn diagrams. And then one of them has to be mutually exclusive, like the men and women from the Titanic. And then one that has an intersection, like the women and their survived. And then you get to pick your third one again. And this time again, on the next slide, which you're actually going to have to insert. So a little practice of inserting another slide so that it looks like the men and women from the Titanic one. So insert a slide, put your 3 Venn diagrams in there, make sure you label them properly. And last here, kind of general thoughts and wrap up. What I want you to do on number 5 is describe the conditions that create mutually exclusive Venn diagrams and those that create intersections. So we've dealt with both of those. So I want you to, in words, describe what would create both of those. Make sure we're answering complete sentences, and you can answer right here on this slide. Also, number 6, what conjecture can you make regarding the best way to create a Venn diagram from data to highlight probabilities? So any thoughts you have as far as looking at probabilities, think about what we looked at and what was the easiest form to have a Venn diagram in order to create some probabilities that have meaningful statistics for us. And then here is your homework. This homework will be due on Monday.